Jared Hoffman here for the first edition of the Better Than Less Than podcast in 2026. Appreciate everybody that's tuning in or will be tuning in soon. If you can, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the HBCU Sports YouTube channel. Follow us on all of us. Oh, wait, no, hope. I'm skipping steps. Subscribe to become a level 1 or 2 member to get the exclusive content from the HBCU Sports team. Follow us on all of our social media platforms: Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. If MySpace was still around, we'd be on there too, but it's not. But all the other social media apps, search up HBCU Sports and you'll find us there. And you can always go to hbcusports.com for all the latest news at HBCU Sports. All right, so we are in the thick of not in the thick of it. We're just returning to basketball season after winter break. So we'll get into all the happenings surrounding the CIAA, including 2 teams currently riding 10-plus game win streaks. But first, we got a little bit of football that we got to address. We had 2 big transfer news happen over the break. Well, one before the new year came in, and then one after the new year came in. We're going to start with the one after the new year came in because I think that one is probably the worst kept secret that happened during the offseason. So Florida A&M, they moved on from James Colsey, head coach, who served 2 seasons in a unremarkable tenure as head coach of Florida A&M. And he was relieved of his duties by the Rattlers. And in his place, Florida A&M hired famous alum, former star quarterback, Quinn Gray. Now, why is that relevant to transfer news? Because the quarterback that was the star at Quinn Gray's former stop at Albany State is now following him to Florida A&M. That is right. Isaiah Knowles is going to Florida A&M, and I can't say many people, if any, are surprised by this. Isaiah Knowles was the star for Albany State this past season, was the SIAC Offensive Player of the Year, despite missing 3 games in the regular season, and was a big part of why Albany State went on its magical run in the Division II playoffs, leading the team to a school record 12 wins last season and made it to the regional final of the Division II playoffs, their deepest playoff run since 2010. So not a surprise here that, as Kim Spears says in the comments, not a surprise at all that Isaiah Knowles is following Quinn Gray to Florida A&M. I kind of expected Tyant Weish to also do that. I'm not sure if he has made his decision yet. I'll have to do some research to see what offers he has gotten. He's also in the transfer portal. So I believe Jamarian Davis, or I hope I'm saying that young man's name right. I apologize if I said his name wrong, but I believe that he's the star receiver or tight end. I'm not sure if he's tight end or receiver, but he's also in the transfer portal who played for Quinn Gray last season. So I like this move by Isaiah Knowles, sticking with this coach and sticking with the guy that he trusts in. And, I would have loved for Isaiah Knowles to stay and see what he could build with Albany State in the first year under David Bowser. But at the end of the day, he has to go with the guy that he's comfortable with. In this day and age in college football, where, there's so much uncertainty in regards to playing time and in regards to the team around you and the kind of weapons you'll have at your disposal, it's only right that he goes with the guy that he knows is going to have his back, that he trusts in his development as a player and as a person. So I think this is Florida A&M got one with Isaiah Knowles and Quinn Gray. So we'll see what kind of damage Florida A&M can do. Coming off a 5-7 season last year, it's only up from here for Florida A&M. That was the worst they have been in the SWAC. Could there be worse? Absolutely. But I think Isaiah Knowles is just entirely too talented for me to believe that he will put a worse output than what Florida A&M had this past season. So I really like this move for Isaiah Knowles, and good on Quinn Gray for getting his guy bringing his guy with him. You know, there may be a question about his size at the in the SWAC and whether he can take the punishment that comes with it. Now, granted, there have been undersized quarterbacks who have gone to the SWAC and have had success. Daniel Richardson, who was at Florida A&M a couple of years ago, had success and was a SWAC Player of the Year candidate. We've seen guys like Shador isn't the biggest guy in the world, and he's had success not only in the SWAC but in the Pac-12 and in the Big 12. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's the size, but given Isaiah Knowles' injury history, having to miss those 3 games in the regular season and having to miss that playoff game, that regional final game that Albany State nearly won against Newberry. Isaiah Knowles didn't play. So he has a bit of an injury history. Will that come into effect at Florida A&M? That remains to be seen. We'll see if he decides to put on a little bit of muscle, if he decides to bulk up in preparation for the SWAC. Because one thing about the SWAC, they got one thing they do is they bring pressure. They bring pressure in the SWAC, and we'll see if Isaiah Knowles. First of all, if Quinn Gray can recruit an offensive line that will protect Isaiah Knowles, so that injury history doesn't come into play. But if that offensive line isn't up to par and they struggle against those SWAC defensive lines, we'll see what kind of muscle Isaiah Knowles can put on in order to deal with the punishment that could potentially come. But as far as the move on the surface, I like it. And I think that Florida A&M is moving in the right direction, and we could see them get back into contendership this upcoming season, especially considering all the uncertainty around their opposition in the SWAC East. We got Andrew Body, who's transferring. You got Travis Terrell Jr. transferring from Jackson State. Alabama A&M, we don't know what to make of them, what direction they're moving in their second season under Sam Shade. So, and Mississippi Valley State is Mississippi Valley State. Even though they were much better this year than they have been in years past, they're still Mississippi Valley State at the end of the day, and they haven't been, much of a factor. Adrian Crook in the comments saying JSU ain't doing expletive in the portal. It's a rare. Well, we ain't talking SWAC here. We talk about the Division II element of it. We may talk about that if we do decide to do a show tomorrow, but we gonna stick to the Division II element of it, which is Isaiah Knowles heading to the SWAC to Florida A&M along with his former head coach Quinn Gray, and we'll see what kind of impact he could have in his new home. Another player on the move. Hold on, we got a question here. Is there a historical perspective behind JSU's solid football attendance compared to others? Thanks. I'm not sure. I think that I'm the wrong person to ask about that. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna make up some kind of answer. There you go. Here's someone who may know better than me. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, you can continue to hit them up in the comments. Flood them comments with all y'all want. Hopefully y'all put some Division II stuff in them comments too. Anyway, so the CIAA champions, the reigning CIAA football champion Johnson C. Smith Golden Bulls, the rich just got richer for them because they have added one of the SIAC's top players from last year, Allen running back Fabian Duncan, who was named the SIAC MVP this past season, which is much different from the SIAC Offensive Player of the Year, because that means he is the overall Player of the Year. Interesting that he wasn't also named the Offensive Player of the Year. I'm curious what went into that decision, but Fabian Duncan is on his way to Johnson C. Smith and to play for the defending CIAA champions. Fabian Duncan had an impressive season last year. If it wasn't for Curtis Allen, he would have gotten a lot more press for his incredible year. But over 1,300 yards this past season on 268 carries, 15 touchdowns for Allen this past season. A Charlotte native, so he's returning to his home where he went to North Mecklenburg High School, one of the more prominent high schools in the Charlotte area. So yeah, Fabian Duncan making his way to Johnson C. Smith to play for the defending CIAA champions. Not sure what whatchamacallit, Johnson C. Smith is going to look like this upcoming season, because Brevin Caldwell, who was one of their top receivers in the 2024 season, he has entered the transfer portal. They have a couple of guys that I believe will be in the HBCU Legacy Bowl. I'm not sure if DeAndre Proctor, who was their star receiver from in the CIAA championship game, who was this hero of the CIAA championship game, Kelvin Durham, I'm not sure how much eligibility he has left. I believe this past year was his senior year. I'm not entirely sure about that, though. Then you also have Brian Lane and Reginald Daniel, who I'm not sure what they how much eligibility they have remaining. So yeah, but I really do like this move for Johnson C. Smith, because one person that I do know will for sure be there next year is Bobby Smith, who as a red shirt freshman had 1,000 yards this season and 9 touchdowns. Really caught on fire as the regular season wound down. Had 3 straight 100-yard games, including a 164-yard performance against Livingstone that clinched their spot into helping Johnson C. Smith clinch their spot into the CIAA championship game. So yeah, a duo of backs, Bobby Smith and Fabian Duncan, will look to get Johnson C. Smith to back-to-back championships. Johnson C. Smith just won CIAA championship this year, stopping the three-peat of Virginia Union and claiming their first CIAA championship since 1969, winning their first ever CIAA championship game. Their only CIAA championship came the year before the CIAA started doing a conference championship game. So, yeah, that just to put in the historical perspective, the drought that Johnson C. Smith just ended, and Maurice Flowers looks like he's bargaining for another one, and has the duo of backs to do it. We'll see if he can put the passing game together. I'm not sure, again, if Kelvin Durham and his complement of receivers will be there with him in their bid for a repeat championship. But they have arguably 2 of the best returning backs. Well, technically, Fabian Duncan isn't a returning back because he was in the SIAC. But at any rate, yeah, one of the best returning backs, the returning one being Bobby Smith, and they'll arguably have one of, if not the best transfer in Fabian Duncan. So yeah, we'll see what Johnson C. Smith has in store for this upcoming season. And if the success keeps rolling in for Johnson C. Smith, I can't imagine Maurice Flowers will be there much longer. But unfortunately, we said the same thing about Dr. Alvin Parker at Virginia Union, and he has not gotten, on the surface, an opportunity to be a Division I head coach like he has deserved for so long. All the success he's had at Virginia Union, he hasn't gotten his opportunity. I don't want the same thing for Maurice Flowers, and I don't want this to continue for Dr. Alvin Parker. Both of those guys have taken their respective programs to heights that they have never seen before. Johnson C. Smith, before this year, had never been in the Division II playoffs. Just won their first conference championship in over 55 years. What more does he have to do to prove that he is ready to be a Division I head coach? Dr. Alvin Parker led Virginia Union to back-to-back CIAA championships and got them back to the CIAA championship game for the 3rd time this past season. Last year led them to their deepest playoff run in Division II playoffs in school history. What more does he have to do? He has had 3 running backs rushed for over 1,500 yards. How many coaches in general have ever done that? How many running backs have ever done that? I think it's good. Like, okay, if that is the case, he's shown that he could develop a running attack, a rush attack. He's done that though. So the quarterbacks haven't been great. Understood. What about the running backs though? Curtis Allen, Jada Byers, two of the best, if not the best running backs in Division II football at the time that they have been doing what they've been doing. Not the best in Division II HBCU football, not in the CIAA, but in Division II football as a whole. They were two of the best the Division II football had to offer. Dr. Alvin Parker was a part of that development. And no school at the Division I level said, I see what he's doing. I want that for my school. They just want to keep cycling the coaches that they have in rotation with no different result. I'm glad that Quinn Gray got his opportunity, and he absolutely deserved it. But the fact that Maurice Flowers and Dr. Alvin Parker have had the consistent level of success that they have had, and they haven't gotten that opportunity, it's ridiculous to me. Should Damon return to Bowie State for a reset? Interesting you asked that question, because as of today, which is January 8th, 2026, Bowie State still has not announced who their next head coach will be, have not given out any hints, have not put out a candidate list. There's no news to report on the Bowie State head coach football front. Cal Jackson, who was the former head coach of Bowie State, it was announced that they would not be renewing his contract, and I believe they announced that in November. It was either November or early December. It's gone on 2 months. We're close to 2 months since Bowie State announced that Cal Jackson was not going to be the next head coach, was not going to be retained as head coach. And there have been no hints about a head coaching hire. Granted, Clark Atlanta and Morehouse have not made any announcements either. And that's also disappointing. You know, hopefully we get an update soon about who the next head coach will potentially be for each of those institutions, but it's starting to become very disappointing because we're very close to National Signing Day. We're coming very close to that, and we have 3 programs that have no head coaches. Now, to straightforward answer your question, should Damon return to Bowie State for a reset? Bowie State should absolutely want that. It's a question whether or not should Damon do it. And honestly, I wouldn't blame him if he said, no, I'm good on that. I would not blame him. Because for what reason should I go backwards? What reason would he have to go backwards? Especially when you see that the program has not progressed in any way since he's been gone. You look at all the teams at the Division II level who moved on from head coaches that moved up to the Division I level. Benedict has improved after Chennis Berry left. We'll see what Albany State can do now that Quinn Gray is gone. You look at all these, those are the only 2 examples, really. But the one true example that we have with Benedict moving on from Chennis Berry, who went to South Carolina State, we see how they improved. Miles and Sam Shade, they had a rough season last year. They went 4-6. We'll see how they can improve upon that. But they had a strong finish to the season, Miles did. I believe they lost their first 5 or 6 games, and they ended up finishing 4-6. So they had a strong finish to the season. So should Damon return? I would love it. I'm pretty sure Bowie would love it, but I'm not sure it's feasible. So hopefully that answers your question. All right. That's enough about football. We are in basketball season. So let's talk about 1 second. A couple of CIAA squads who are currently riding big win streaks. We are talking about Winston-Salem State's women and Virginia Union's men. So Winston-Salem State is we're starting with Winston-Salem State's women. After losing their first game of the season against North Carolina A&T, they are currently riding a 12-game win streak. And that includes a win in their return to conference play against Bluefield State yesterday, beating them 81-64. Got a big performance from Maya Charles, who transferred from Virginia Union along with head coach Tierra Terry. She had 30 points on 14 of 19 shooting, 11 rebounds, and 7 blocks. Maya Charles is putting forth a strong argument to be named the CIAA Player of the Year. She is having a remarkable season, averaging just shy of 16 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 stocks, which is 2 blocks and 2 steals. She is the runaway candidate for the CIAA Defensive Player of the Year. It's between her and she has a teammate who is averaging 3 steals a game, who has a great case to win the CIAA Defensive Player of the Year. I'm trying to get that name to you guys. That is Nevaeh Farmer. So, no, excuse me, Michaela Waleed. Excuse me, I'm sorry. But yeah, Maya Charles is putting forth a strong case to be named the CIAA's offensive player, the CIAA's Player of the Year this year. And Winston-Salem State looking like a threat to end Fayetteville State's run of CIAA championships. As we look at the standings, right now they're at the top of the standings, and they are at the top of the food chain right now. They already, I believe they already have a win against Fayetteville State. No, excuse me, though. I'm thinking of I'm thinking of Virginia Union's men. Sorry, but their conference wins this year are against Bowie, Lincoln, and Bluefield State. Granted, they don't have the most impressive schedule on paper, but the name of the game is winning, and that's what they're doing right now. And Maya Charles is looking as dominant as any player in HBCU basketball in general. So we'll see if Winston-Salem State can ride that momentum with their head coach, who has returned to her alma mater and has them looking like a serious championship threat, with arguably the top player in Black college basketball in Maya Charles. Next up, we have Virginia Union's men, who is currently riding a 13-game win streak. Again, that's another team who lost in their season debut. They lost to Millersville in their season debut, and they have since rattled off 13 straight wins, 11 against Division II opponents. So, Virginia Union just got a win a couple of days ago, 2 days ago, against Shaw in their return to conference play, a 75-61 win. One thing I like about Virginia Union is they do it by committee. I believe they have 6 players who are averaging over 7 points per game this season, led by Malachi Dark, who in that win against Shaw had 15 points on 7 of 9 shooting. But This is a team that does it by community. They are a strong defensive team, had 12 steals in that win against Shaw, and limited them to 39% shooting in the game while they shot 54%. So an efficient scoring offense and a strong defensive unit, so let's see. WSSU women are undefeated in Division II play. If they can win out, they can host a super region. They absolutely can. They absolutely can. That'll even if they don't win the tournament, they could potentially host at least a first round matchup. But if they win out, they absolutely can host a region. I have to do my research on, the on Division II basketball as a whole, but as far as the CIAA, they have looked levels above everyone so far. We'll see what happens when they start getting deeper in the conference competition, if they're able to keep this level of success up, you know, but they look really good right now. They look very good. They have, excuse me, I'm looking up the schedule right now. They have Elizabeth City State coming up. Elizabeth City State currently winless in conference play. They have Virginia State at home, and then they go on a road for a 3-game road trip against Shaw, Claflin, and Fayetteville State. I think that Claflin game is probably going to be their biggest test. Claflin currently 3-0 in conference play. The only other undefeated team in the CIAA in conference play. So that'll be a big test for Winston-Salem State. Fayetteville State will absolutely be a test as well. But I believe the Winston-Salem State, the Claflin game is before the Fayetteville State game. So that and they have both of those teams back to back on the road. So I pointed out the Claflin game because that's before the Fayetteville State game, but absolutely Fayetteville State will be a test. But back to Virginia Union, currently riding a 13-game win streak. They have been teetering for years now. Virginia Union has always been a very good regular season team. Has had a couple of 20-win seasons over the past couple of years. The problem is that they get to the tournament and that success doesn't translate. It's not like they're one and dones, but they don't finish the ultimate task, which is bringing home the trophy. They've gone up against Fayetteville State. They've gone up against Lincoln. They've gone up against Bluefield State, teams that have been strong tournament teams, and they haven't been able to measure up. Virginia State as well, so they're having a great regular season run so far, but the thing about it is they've always been a great regular season team. The question is, can it translate over to the tournament? That's not to poo-poo what they're doing right now because they're playing excellent. They absolutely are. But we need to see that consistency throughout the rest of the regular season, and it needs to carry over into the tournament. But again, not to poo-poo what they're doing. Jay Butler has this team playing inspired basketball right now, and be hard-pressed to say that they're not the favorite in the CIAA so far this year. As looking at the standings, they're the only team other than Shaw who has over at least 10 wins overall. And Shaw is 1-3 in conference play. So it's literally them up here and everybody else is down here. So right now, they are the team, they are the undisputed favorite. They are the absolute undisputed favorite in the CIAA this year. And if they don't win it this year, then some questions are going to be asked about what will it take for Virginia Union to get it done. So seems CIAA teams get into the tournament and can't defend against 3-point shooting teams. That's an interesting outlook. There have definitely been a couple of teams who have gone out in the tournament because they have allowed 3-point explosions. I remember I believe it was in 2024 when Fayetteville State beat Virginia State in the semifinals of the CIAA tournament before going on to win the championship against Elizabeth City State. They had a 3-point barrage in that game. Nyla Bryant, who was the CIAA Player of the Year that year, I think she went 3 quarters without missing a shot in that game. Like, she just got hot and could not she just could not miss. And then Virginia State and their women in the next year in the championship game against Fayetteville State allowed a 3-point barrage against Fayetteville State, and they won back to back. So there may be some truth to that. I'll have to do some further research about teams in the CIAA tournament and how they defend against the 3 in the tournament compared to the regular season. But yeah, there has been. Yeah, there have been some examples of teams that played well in the regular season that were done in by 3-point barrages. So we'll see how the CIAA season will pan out as games continue. We got a full slate of games coming up today. A couple of double headers. You have Shaw hosting Lincoln on both sides. We have Claflin against Bowie State. We got Johnson C. Smith against Elizabeth City State. You got Virginia State against Livingstone. And the aforementioned Virginia Union will travel to Fayetteville State. So a lot of great basketball on the day. You can watch that all on the CIAA Sports Network. I believe the women's games are currently on right now. So if you go to the CIAA Sports Network, and the website is theciaasn.com. Oh no, excuse me. The women are the later games and the men are the earlier games. That's new. I've never known the women's games to actually be first and then the men's games be second. Well, somebody no. My bad. I read the times wrong. It's the women's games that I was on I thought I was on the women's site. I was on the men's site. So the women's games, the only women's game that comes on after the men's game is Shaw and Lincoln. Shaw and Lincoln's men play each other at 4, and the women play each other at 6. All the other games start at 5. Livingstone, Virginia State starts at 5:30. So does Johnson C. Smith and Elizabeth City State, and Claflin and Bowie State. Then the men play at 7:30. Then for Fayetteville State and Virginia Union, the women play at 6 and the men play at 8. Again, you can watch all of that at the CIAA Sports Network, the CIAASN.com, for all of the action in CIAA basketball. And you can tune into HBCUsports.com. I will be giving a weekend recap, a full week recap. That's kind of a special announcement that I will be doing a special recap, a full recap of all the action in the CIAA leading up to the CIAA tournament, which will be taking place from February 24th to February 28th. So I will be keeping you all in the loop on all of the happenings in CIAA basketball, and I'll be giving you all. I'll give you all the scoops, all the teams that you need to be looking out for, the players you need to be looking out for, with the keys to victory and everything. So tune in to HBCUsports.com for those recaps, but you can always watch on your own. One more time, THECIAASN.com to watch all of the action in CIAA basketball. All right. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Better Than Less Than podcast. Appreciate everybody who tuned in, all the people who were active in the chat and watching along. If you can, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the HBCU Sports YouTube channel. Follow us on all of our social platforms. Search up HBCU Sports and you'll find us there. And you can always go to HBCUsports.com for all the latest news at HBCU Sports. Please go to HBCUsports.com/donate to help us to fund this operation. This is not cheap. Ken Rashad has a lot on his plate, and he has a lot of people that he has to pay. As much money as he got, he still needs a little bit more. So please help. Go to hbcusports.com/donate to help and be a part of the HBCU sports movement. Until next time, I am Jared Hoffman. See you guys.